It's been a long time since I've played Splatoon. I really got into Splatoon 1 for a few months where I would always play it. Then Splatoon 2 came around and I barely even touched it for some reason. And now we come to Splatoon 3. And I've got a lot to say about this game because I have many points that I really hear nobody bring up. So let's look at this game, go over what I liked and disliked, see if the game is too similar to the previous Splatoon games, like many people are saying, and let's see if this will be the game to get me back into playing Splatoon. So we load it up, make a character, watch some intro cutscenes, and then we get dropped into the main hub, allowing us to jump right into any mode. Why don't we start with the gameplay here? You know, it's Splatoon and feels very similar to the previous games in this series. So if you're familiar with the series, you'll right away feel right at home. However, if you haven't played them, then Splatoon is like this really cool take on an arena shooter. Instead of bullets, you shoot ink, and instead of typical soldiers, you play as weird squid kid mutants. Okay, fine, that maybe sounds kinda lame, but in practice, it works really well. See, you can turn into this squid form in which you can swim in your team's ink color that is much faster than walking, and it makes you harder to see. In Splatoon 3 though, you do actually have two new moves, being the squid roll and squid surge. Honestly, they don't really change the game that much. However, I could see squid roll being used a lot more as people get good with it, cause look how you can just swim, then jump off a wall to hit the guy up on the platform. MLG, man. The basic mode here is Turf War, but unlike other shooters, the main objective is to not kill people, but rather to ink the most area in the given time frame. And yeah, it's a fun mode to sink some time into, but I think things get real exciting when you start playing ranked in the more objective-based game modes. This is where I really got into the strategic play styles, how different weapons interact with each other, and how to play as different roles on a team. All the different game types are mostly pretty great, but tower defense is definitely my favorite one. There's a lot of strategy and teamwork required to advance your tower forward, plus it gets so hectic on the tower itself. A pretty funny thing I've been doing is warping to a teammate who's on that tower, and then use a roller to just quickly splat everyone on that tower. The only mode I'm actually kinda torn on is this clam collecting one. It's more random with this one, it's a lot harder to play as a team, I just wasn't much of a fan. But while I had fun with all of these, I did notice something pretty quickly. And that's the fact that there are literally 0 new game modes in Splatoon 3. Yeah, these are good game modes, but just what kind of sequel doesn't have a single new mode to play? Sure, there's that new tricolor Turf War, but that's just a take on normal Turf War, plus it's only available during Splatfest, so I couldn't really even play it. Now this review is gonna have a lot of back and forth points like this, but it will be super important to watch my conclusion on this game at the end of this video, because the final verdict just might surprise you, so stick around till the end for that. However, the gameplay at its core is still as fun as ever to play. And a big contribution to this is due to all the different crazy and wacky weapons that you can use in these matches. It's really enjoyable to try out all the different weapons in this game, since they are all so unique and fill out different roles on your team. There's your basic, fully auto weapons, like the Splatter Shot, which is a jack-of-all-trades type weapon. Then there's these blaster weapons that are really good at killing squids, but have a pretty hard time covering the map with ink. And then there's the comically large paint rollers that these squids just yield that look absolutely hilarious, but are very fun to use. They have a lot of power, but are pretty slow to fire. I've been having a blast using this strategy where I throw a roller bomb and then immediately swim behind it to sneak up to people with my roller. However, much like the game modes, this weapon roster had so many repeat weapons that I did recognize from even the first Splatoon game. In fact, there are only 2 new types of weapons in this game, being the Tri-Stinger bows and the Splatanas. And while both of these weapon types are actually very fun to use and have a lot of depth to both of them, this weapon sandbox can feel a bit too similar to the previous games. However, I will say they brought back weapons in a very smart way, so there's still tons of variety even with all the repeat weapons. Basically, they brought back every single weapon type from the previous 2 games, but just got rid of certain weapon variants to presumably make room for the new ones. So really, this game has a bit of everything from all the Splatoon games when it comes to the weapons. This is a great advantage to have, because now there are so many different weapons to choose from. Seriously, this is always what keeps the game fresh. No pun intended. But on top of that, you also got the sub and special weapons to complement your kit. The sub weapons are like your grenades of sorts, and they're mostly things we've seen before. However, then there's the special weapons, a super weapon of sorts that you can only use once, and for the most part, they are all brand new in this game. There's some really unique new ones too, like the Zipcaster turning you into Spider-Man, or there's the Ink Vac that does the opposite of what you normally do in this game by sucking in opponents' ink to then launch it back at them. You gotta use these strategically, as in a pinch they can really shake up the battle, and finding the right kit with a good main, sub, and special weapon was always fun. Also, if you're liking this review so far, then subscribe to the channel, as I have a bunch of Nintendo videos like this on there. Thanks. While there are some other modes you can play besides the standard online arena matches that I will talk about later in just a bit, however, the focus of this game is clearly on the online, so we gotta look at how good this online actually is. Because Nintendo doesn't really have the best record on this kind of stuff, but does this game's online actually work? Well, for the most part, matches felt pretty solid and steady. There's no slowdown because of the online, and the shots seem to register. I'd say Splatoon 3 at least has on-par connection with other shooters in the market. I also like how you can just screw around in the lobby right up until you find a match, so there's very little time where you're actually not in control. Plus, it's a great way to quickly test out your guns right before a match. Only thing, I wish you can leave or just do anything after you've already selected find a match. Like, you can't change weapons, clothes, or even back out of the lobby when waiting. Sure, you can choose to change your gear right after the match, which is a nice feature, but why can't I just change them anytime when I'm waiting? Plus, in ranked mode, you can't even change gear in between games. Like, what? Why was this feature only in Turf War and not in ranked? There you go, that's 31 things that don't make sense now. However, oh man, does this game ever just make the weirdest choices when it comes to how they let you play online? And this is probably my biggest flaw with the game, so let me explain. Splatoon 3 actually has a lot of maps and modes in it, but you can only play on 2 maps per game mode and 3 different game modes at any given time. Then, every 2 hours, the maps and modes switch. I mean, come on, even on paper that sounds like a bad idea. 2 maps out of 12 every 2 hours? Really? So after every match, you have a 50-50 chance of playing the same map over again if you stay in the same game mode. And this is something you're gonna have to deal with at the end of every game, assuming you want to keep playing the same game type. I've had one occasion where I played the same map 6 times in a row. Just how is that allowed? Or then tower defense is my favorite mode, but I'm not even guaranteed the chance to play it, and even if I do get it on rotation, it might only be playable on a not so great map, which isn't good either. Why not just create a tower defense playlist and one for every different mode? I mean, there's only 5 modes here. That's not even that much. Like, this is something I've never seen in a multiplayer game. It creates more problems than it solves. Like, imagine Fortnite, where you can only sometimes play duos, or Call of Duty, where you have to get lucky if you want to play domination. And okay, I wouldn't be harping this much about this point if it wasn't now the 3rd game to do this in a row. And it's a shame, because when you finally get in these matches, it is so much fun and is super smooth, but there's still all these hoops you have to jump through just to play on what you want. But this game isn't just all online play, because like the other games in this series, it also has a single player story mode as well. And it's decent, I guess. I mean, yeah, there's some good levels in here. There's some pretty unique layouts in some of the stages too, so it can be fun traversing these areas, I'll say that. Oh, and the bosses are actually really well designed and rewarding to beat, so this part is great. I like how you progress in the story too. And this is done in this little hub world where you have to remove patches of this, well, fuzzy ooze. And yes, that's what it's actually called, in order to open up various levels. There's not too much to do in these hub worlds, but it's still nice to just walk around in them and take in the atmosphere. Plus, there is a bit of choice in which level you want to play next by choosing which area to clear. Compared to the multiplayer though, it's not nearly as exciting. Still fun in its own right, but I couldn't play it for that long without thinking, man, I just want to leave and start playing online again. But the biggest letdown for this part was, just look at the trailer for this game. Look at the promotion. It looks like this deserted, post-apocalyptic Splatoon world. Maybe this is like a more open exploration type Splatoon game. Nope, it's the same structure as the other Splatoon story modes. It doesn't even look like a deserted world, it just looks very similar to the previous games. Like sure, you got this new hub world, but all the actual levels play out the same as before, which just seems like a big missed opportunity, especially for the third game. The last main mode in this game is called Salmon Run, which is like this PvE horde mode. So basically, if you take Call of Duty Zombies and mix it with squids, you get this. But instead of zombies, you face waves of salmonids or salmonoids? What? It's really called salmonids? What a dumb name. I'm calling them salmonoids. But these things are like these weird, overall wearing, frying pan wielding salmon mutants. And they're a pretty cool enemy. Basically, you just have to survive rounds of these guys trying to kill you while you collect a certain amount of salmon eggs that you get from the boss salmonoids. This mode's just fun. I love mowing down these groups of fish. And the boss salmonoids provide a great change of pace and challenge in the rounds. Plus, they just have really cool designs too. The atmosphere is awesome in this mode, I gotta say. I love this sunset vibe we got here, combined with the rusty and gross military look of everything. This base you're right by is like a prison combined with an oil rig. And then they have this really ominous sounding horn that signals a new round in which the salmonoids then appear out of this gross sludge water. It's a great vibe out here. But okay, the one weird thing with this mode, because this game has a lot of weird restrictions, is that even though you don't actually fight other players, you still need to be online to play this mode. In fact, you can't even just play with one person where you're the only one in the match. Also, I wish there was just an endless type mode where you just fight waves and waves of salmonoids the whole time. As it stands, there's only 3 rounds that progressively get harder. Sure, you can play as many 3 rounds you want in a row, but I still think it would be cool to have some sort of endless wave spawning mode. Even with these complaints though, Salmon Run I had a lot of fun with. But with all these different modes and options, this game also has a really great way of connecting everything together. And that is through the hub world known as Splatsville. This place is really cool. There's only like a few streets and paths in it, but there is so much detail in this small area. Plus you can see other users' posts about stuff in this game, with, interesting results. I really like how once again they made all the different options as different stores and buildings in the hub world too. Like the main online battle place is this giant building, and they made actual storefronts for all the shops where you buy gear. But what's really smart about this is that if you don't care about this hub and just want to go directly into the different buildings, then you can just select that from a menu. So it's perfect. It has the functionality of a traditional menu, but the charm and atmosphere of a hub world type menu. Beautiful. Then we have the graphics and animations here, and they are all really top notch. The art style, the use of colors, the world building all make for a really eye-appealing experience. Yeah, that's one way to put it. In the matches, the game runs at a smooth 60 FPS, and I don't recall any slowdown, even with all this ink being splatted around. The main town, Splatsville, does only run at 30 FPS, unfortunately, and the draw distance for other characters is pretty tiny, so they often just fade in. But still, they did what they did to make the game run okay, and in all the actual gameplay parts, everything is very well optimized and smooth. And finally, let's move on to the music in this game. Surprisingly enough, this is another very unique aspect. It really adds to the whole world building of the Splatoon universe, as it does actually sound like music squids would listen to. As weird of a statement that is, if you actually listen to the songs, it'll make sense. And I don't know why, and I especially don't know how, but Nintendo can make the weirdest sounds and noises that absolutely slap in a song. So, with that all being said, what is my overall take on this game? Do I even like Splatoon 3 with all these flaws and issues? Well, yes. I actually really like Splatoon 3 quite a lot, even with all these aforementioned problems too. This is honestly because of the core gameplay. The fact of the matter is that when you get into your game, you'll forget about all these other problems because of how fun the actual gameplay is. Like, from a very casual Splatoon fan like me, this game really does feel like just more Splatoon 1 and that's it. Because I don't really notice all the minor improvements and tweaks between games that a more seasoned Splatoon player might. But honestly, even with such slight differences and improvements from the previous games in the series, Splatoon still stands out as a super unique arena shooter game, even in the year 2022, compared to many other shooters out there. Do I wish they went in a crazier and more unique direction with this game? Yes, definitely. But as it stands, Splatoon 3 is still a super fun Switch game, and I'd say it's the best Splatoon game in this series.